Hello everyone, this is Anthony Herder and this is my curriculum review project. I'm going to be reviewing the introductory unit of a freshman physical science class. Like most introductory units, the whole point of the unit is to introduce the students to what the class will be all about and to help them understand scientific processes. So with that being said, the scientific method is the primary focus of the unit, hopefully allowing students to understand, what a hypothesis is and the proper way to investigate a hypothesis, understanding independent and dependent variables, and so on. The reason I chose this unit is because I feel it's the most important unit of the year because it basically sets the tone for the entire class. A lot of students, probably especially freshmen, they judge the class pretty early. And if they don't like the class within the first few days, they might not like it for, the whole year, at least for a very long time. It takes quite a while to change students' opinions. So I think this is an important unit, and I wanted to evaluate it to see if there were some ways we could improve it. So this is what the unit, the curriculum looks like. It's pretty simple, which is kind of good and kind of bad, but I'll dive into that deeper throughout this presentation. It obviously has the big ideas and enduring understandings, some essential questions, learning targets, and the main standard that it covers, but it doesn't have these things down here filled in. We do have a common assessment and a common lab, but it's not listed on this unit plan. So right away, a strength of this to me is that it's pretty simple. It's not an overwhelming curriculum to look at. And it's nice that it is kind of short because then, teachers can teach things their own way. It doesn't try and micromanage and say all the teachers need to teach everything the exact same way. But then a weakness, of course, is that it is missing some things down here that would be helpful, especially for new teachers in the school. Okay, so diving deeper, the first consideration is on organizing centers. The big idea of the unit, of course, is the scientific method, and it's kind of a theme and a process. So I'll go back to that document here shortly. But our school's motto that I got right from our website through the West Fargo Public Schools is educating today's learners for tomorrow's world. And I think that's great because it's the point of high school, in my opinion, is to get the students ready for adult life, whatever that may be. And no matter what students are doing in life, they will need to, be responsible, work hard, and understand how the scientific method fits into their life. So if we're looking back here at the actual curriculum, right here, right away, the scientific method is used to investigate the world all around you. So if we can try and tie in the scientific method to the students' everyday life, hopefully that will get them interested in the class. And then, of course, it's up to the teachers to continue to relate the scientific method to their life. So continuing with the organizing center, some strengths and weaknesses of it. The primary strength, as I said, is how easy it aligns to the school's mission statement, preparing students for adult life and getting them to understand how this relates to their life. And a common example I would use in class is, for example, cooking a pizza. A lot of high schoolers like to make frozen pizzas. Well, say they make the pizza and they realize that the pizza is very burned when they pull it out of the oven. So that's the initial observation. I'm sure they'd ask themselves right away, well, how can I make sure I don't burn the pizza next time? And they would probably come up with some hypotheses, whether it be lower the temperature or reduce the amount of time the pizza is in the oven. But they would, without even knowing it, they would be using the scientific method to solve a problem. To me, the weakness of this unit that I didn't talk about yet, or this curriculum for the organizing center, is the inclusion of graphs. Right here, graphs can be used to represent data. To me, that's kind of like a supplemental thing that doesn't necessarily tie directly into the rest of the unit. So I don't think that should be there as far as a big idea or enduring understanding. Moving on to consideration 2, alignment to standards. In the book, High Quality Curriculum, Ensuring High Quality Curriculum, on page 44, Michely states that two critical areas to examine when evaluating or designing curriculum for standards alignment are 1, the degree of the alignment, and 2, the communication of standards that are taught and assessed. So specific standards and tasks aren't really shown in this curriculum. It basically just states right here that it fits into the next generation science standard about the understandings about the nature of science. And that's really it. It doesn't get into too much details. And the book we read also talks about standards that some are taught and addressed and then assessed, and some are simply taught. There's no distinction between any of that simply because it's just one vague standard that is mentioned. So a strength is that it does acknowledge that it covers that big standard from the next generation science standards that fit understanding the nature of science, which is great for the first unit of the year because students will need to understand that nature of science throughout the unit. And as I said before, a major weakness is that it doesn't distinguish between those that are addressed, those that are taught, and those that are taught and assessed. As Michely states in this quote right here about the standards, the difference is that some are simply addressed while others are really examined in detail and will be assessed intently. Consideration 3, standards, placement, and emphasis. As I already said, that main standard about understanding the nature of science is really the only one that's focused on in this curriculum document. But it is great. The scientific method fits perfectly into this. As my example kind of shown, I think, with the pizza, that whether they know it or not, students are using the scientific method in their everyday life. They're making observations, they're coming up with hypotheses to fix a potential problem, and then they're doing things differently in their everyday life to see if they get a different result. And if students can get a good understanding of this scientific method, it will help them and give them the knowledge they need to be successful in the course, because we use the scientific method throughout the course as we do different labs and kind of investigate problems and possible solutions to those problems. Something that will be a weakness, it's not grade level specific. This standard about understanding the nature of science, it's that same basic standard for any grade, really. I mean, you could use that standard for first grade up through seniors, and it wouldn't really be that much different. Obviously, the material would be different, but that standard fits for any grade level. So Michely did state in the book that it's important that standards are developmentally appropriate and focused for grade level. Well, as I just said, that's not the case with this standard. It's just very general. So it's a kind of a weakness that it isn't broken up more specifically for teachers to understand how to teach this standard differently for freshmen compared to seniors. And as I already said once, a strength for this standard is that if the students can understand it well, it will benefit them throughout the entire course. Consideration 4, assessment types and purposes. As I mentioned in the intro, we do have a common assessment and a common lab that we do, but unfortunately they are not listed on this document. So that would be something that could definitely be updated when we evaluate this document and try and change it. But the investigative lab we do is on the densities of regular soda and diet soda. And it's just a regular old written test. It's online through our learning management system, Schoology, which is cool because then they do it online. It saves paper. It grades itself right away with the multiple choice questions and whatnot. But the investigative lab, it's diagnostic and formative. It gives students a chance to kind of do some critical thinking based on a question and then use the scientific method to find their answer. So let's see, Michely stated in the book that many people believe assessment automatically means test, but this is not accurate. It can be many different things like a test, quiz, demonstration, or a project. So one strength would be it uses multiple forms of assessment. So as I kind of talked about that density of the soda can lab, it is a form of assessment because we can see students, see their critical thinking skills, see how they use the scientific method to solve the problem. A weakness of the curriculum is it doesn't actually give the specific assessments. You know, us teachers that have been there before, we know what they are, but if someone new were to come in, or if we were to share this curriculum document with someone else, they wouldn't know what those common assessments or common labs are. I'll briefly describe that soda can experiment. I didn't know this before I taught the lab, but it makes sense. A diet soda is less dense than a regular soda, and you know, you can kind of have the discussion with students with why. Could do that possibly before, but it would be better after to let them investigate it. But since regular soda has sugar in it, it makes it more dense. So especially with high sugar sodas like a Mountain Dew compared to a Diet Mountain Dew, a can of Diet Mountain Dew will float and a regular Mountain Dew will sink. So we have them come up with hypotheses for what the difference will be. They put each can in the water and then observe the differences. 5 is the curriculum. Consideration 5 is the curriculum embedded performance assessments. Measures learning through the practice problems, identifying independent and dependent variable. This is, I'm going to go forward a step here. A weakness of the curriculum is because these specific assignments are not listed on the curriculum document. Once again, we have several practice problems where they identify the independent and dependent variable, but these assessments are not, and these practice problems are not listed specifically on the document. The central part of the unit, as I've stated, is the scientific method. That's in the organizing center. And this curriculum does include a few things to help understand the scientific method, but once again, it's still lacking those common assessments aren't actually listed on the document. We also do some discussions in class as far as, I give them a scenario up on the big screen, have them come up with some answers in their head, and talk to, someone near them in the room, kind of a think, pair, share type thing. But we have several different things to help them further understand independent and dependent method, variables, independent and dependent variables. The learning targets here kind of show, it's kind of like a checklist. It shows a few things that hopefully they can do by the end of the unit. Be, pretty easy to look at that as a checklist for what they should be able to do. Micheley states in the book once again that it is important that assessments be embedded in the curriculum and not events viewed as separate from the classroom. I think we do a good job of this as we are constantly assessing. I think every teacher is, whether it's just walking around the room, listening to students talk and observing them work, asking questions. But I think teachers in general, we're almost constantly assessing students on what they know and what they don't know, whether it's formally or informally. Strength of this curriculum, again, is we have several of those methods that I described through class discussions and an investigative lab and practice problems to see what the students know. But then on the flip side, those specific assessments are not listed on the curriculum document. All right, consideration 6 is on instruction. Micheley I took a direct quote out of here. It's kind of long, but when it says, when evaluating curriculum or determining how to best address instruction within your curriculum, it is important to ensure that either the lesson or the learning experience clearly describes what students will do, why they will do it, and the evidence the teacher has of student learning, and to determine how strongly the lessons or learning experiences align to the standards of the unit. So once again, this inquiry lab with the soda cans, I'm investigating the differences in density. I think it's really good because it addresses the scientific method. Our students use the scientific method, which is a big part of this unit. But the document itself doesn't give specific instructions for instruction. So once again, it's a weakness because if a new teacher comes in or were to take this document and give it to someone else, those teachers wouldn't know exactly what to do to teach this unit or get that standard taught. But on the flip side, that could be a strength because teaching is kind of an art as well, or it is an art. Not everyone does it the exact same way. So that's how I mentioned at the beginning. Could be viewed as a strength that this is vague because just like, not every chef is going to cook the same way or not every artist is going to paint the same way. Teachers are all different and they have different ways of doing things. And this somewhat vague curriculum or lack of instruction gives teachers the ability to teach the way that works best for them and teach the ways they see fit. Consideration 7, resources that support instruction. Once again, it's a big weakness of this curriculum. There's nothing specifically there to use for materials. As you can see at the way bottom here, suggested resources, it's blank. We do have a PowerPoint document we use as notes that we cover with the students. We all have it edited slightly to fit our own personal needs, but really the only thing we have is that PowerPoint document. We don't have textbooks that we use at this point because our school is 1-to-1. All the students have an iPad, so everything is on there. We don't have much for specific videos or other documents. It's all just in that PowerPoint, which is a pretty big weakness. I think a way to improve this, find a news article, preferably relatively new, of course, maybe preferably a local news article where the scientific method is being used, and then students could mark the text on, the observations that were made, variables, and those other parts of the scientific method. Up to consideration 8, success with your curriculum. As I've clearly stated, I hope the curriculum lacks a general description, fully developed units, and supporting materials. Basically, this curriculum document is an entire unit, but it doesn't have a general description or those supporting materials, as I mentioned with consideration 7. Us physical science teachers, I think there's 5 or 6 of us. We meet once a week to collaborate and gain a better understanding of the curriculum. So we're talking about potential resources we can use and important things to discuss with the class. But as I've stated, those things aren't on the curriculum document. We also informally analyze student work to improve the curriculum. Going back, we don't have a set process for how we evaluate their knowledge to change the curriculum. It's kind of just informal observation for what we need to focus more on for students to further understand the material. So Micheley states in the book, aspects of quality curriculum include easy accessibility, professional development, and is connected to student work. So the document's really easy to access for us. We can share it with each other. And as I said, we meet once a week, which is good to further discuss things. But there's no formal process to evaluate the student work as a weakness of the curriculum. So we could change that by trying to, further evaluate assessments at the end of the unit to see where students struggle and then make appropriate changes the next year to make sure students are better understanding the material. Okay, so a summary of all of this. Overall, I don't want to say this is a great curriculum document. I'd say it's slightly below average. It could be a lot better. It has some good things, as I stated, as the big things like the essential questions and the big ideas, but obviously it lacks some things down here that would be helpful. A way to improve the document, of course, would be to add those things to the blank areas of the document. We have them, we just need to update this and put those things in there, like the common assessment, some unit vocabulary, and the common lab that we do, and also some more resources would be helpful as well. These quickly the resources that I use, obviously the book, the Micheley book on ensuring high quality curriculum, and then I knew our school mission statement, but I've just used the West Fargo Public Schools webpage in order to officially find it and make sure I had the wording down perfect.